Hello everybody. So what an amazing day in the market today, but let's focus on MSTR. MSTR itself had a great announcement today. Yet again, he bought Bitcoin and he bought a lot. He bought $1.34 billion worth of Bitcoin. Yesterday I said I think he's going to do $1 billion. Well, he does more than that. He does $1.34 billion. We are in the ATM era. This is an ATM play. I reiterate what I said yesterday. I would be perfectly fine with him doing 1.5 billion of ATM a week. In fact, if you really think about it, if he were to issue $21 billion of ATM each quarter, right, at each Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 call, he issues a new $21 billion ATM plan. He would need to do roughly 1.75 billion of ATM a week. I think this is more than feasible, especially in the bull run that we're about to enter, in my view. I know some of you in the comment section yesterday in the video are like, what is an ATM? What is an ATM? An ATM, once again, is an at-the-market share offering. The ATM is simply an authorization that is always in place that allows MSTR, Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, it allows that stock to mint and print and sell new shares. They sell new shares. They create brand new shares and they sell them on the open market at whatever price MSTR is trading at that moment. And that, of course, dilutes the stock, but it dilutes the stock in exchange for cash. And that cash, that money that they get in, is above the intrinsic Bitcoin value of the stock. That is how you create yield, because the stock is about, let's say the stock is $1 worth of Bitcoin, and you sell it for $2 worth of Bitcoin. You collect the delta between the 1 and the 1.96. So if you were to print $1 right now, if we were to print $1.96 right now, he would be collecting 0.96, and the 1 would be the dilution. If we were to print 1.96 right now, to make it simple, when we explain this, is if we have a price to NAV of 2, if he prints 2, he collects 1, he dilutes 1. He dilutes 1, he collects 1. So that's the price to NAV, where right now is 1.96. Actually, a tad less as I record this video because the stock went down a little bit at the open. But give it a day, give it 2 days. The MNAV should bounce right back. And then you can ATM all over again. You can ATM once more and collect that premium again. And the key is to do this, to do this enough so that you collect a Bitcoin yield, but not too much, so that you actually drop the price to NAV. You drop the price to NAV too much. If you drop the price to NAV to 1.1, that would be still okay, but not as good as a 2. And that's the big debate. But I think Saylor is fine staying around a 2, and I'm perfectly fine with him doing that. I want to point out once again, the king of sandbag did strike, because look, we are May 12, and May 12, that's it. We've achieved 15.5% yield to date, year-to-date yield, BTC yield to date, year-to-date is 15.5%. Why is that meaningful? Why do I call Saylor the king of sandbagging? Because this was the guidance we got on Q3. This was Q3 by the way, Q3, Q4, and Q1. Okay, so the guidance we got in Q3 on October 31st, the guidance we got was, we think we're going to do between 6 and 10% BTC yield in 2025. February, Q4. In February, we get an update. We think we're going to do 15% yield in 2025. A week ago, right, we got a revised guidance. We think we're going to do 25% in 2025. Because as of today, they've achieved the 15% yield that they just guided in February, right? And as of February, they had already roughly more or less smoked the 6% yield that they had guided in Q3. So I don't know what kind of yield they are going to do in 25. My guess is between 37. My guess has been roughly 37%, but maybe between 37 and 35%. That would be my guess is the yield they're going to achieve this year. I expect the 25% revenue guide to be updated in Q2 again, and perhaps in Q3 again. So anyways, this is an ATM story. This is all about the ATM. Let me show you why. Of course, I'll show you why. If you look at the common ATM, 1.31 billion of ATM this week, 25 million of the strike is preferred. The preferred only did 25 million. The common did 1.3 billion. So if you look at the common, this is still a common ATM story. It's mostly a common ATM story. The strike ATM is nice, but this, in my view, still remains an experiment for the future. That's why he emphasizes so much education around the preferred. The strike ATM is not ready for prime time just yet. What is ready for prime time right now is the common ATM, because it did 1.31 billion. And let's conclude and talk about MSTR in the ATM era. So like I said, convertible bonds, my last video yesterday is I don't think it's going to do much of those anymore. Strike ATM, mostly in an experiment, but make no mistake, the strike ATM went down. If you look, we went down from 51 million to 25 million. We went down. So this tells me that this is probably our cruise speed. The cruising speed is probably, based on what I can see, we have now 3 weeks of a look back. The cruising speed is probably 37 million a week plus or minus 13 million. So it's fairly small. Let's call it 2 billion a year. Well, it's crazy to think that it's small. There was a time where this was big for MicroStrategy, but this is where the BTC Stock comes in, because actually 2 billion a year is torqued at 10.4, right? So over 10 years, assuming that you have a maximalist BTC appreciation expectation, assuming you think Bitcoin is going to do 30% ARR, average rate of return over the next 10 years, you think Bitcoin is going to do 30%, these 2 billions would be turned into an auspicious 21 billion. Right, over a 10-year period. So that's still nothing to sneeze at. That's still really, really good. But compare this with the ATM once torqued. So the ATM was 1.34 billion this week. What would that equal to, right, over a 10-year period? Well, it would equal to a 6.9 times that amount. So it would be actually 9.2 billion over 10 years. And that's in a week. Keep in mind, that's potential value created over the next 10 years in a week. You're at 9.2 billion, right? This is roughly, for a full year, you're at 21 billion for Strike. So Strike needs to speed up, and for that it needs education, which it doesn't have right now. And the preferred market is a smaller market than the just straight equity market, especially for the pool of equities that MSTR is now firmly a part of, which is the QQQ, the NASDAQ club. The NASDAQ is the best performing stock market basket out there. There is no second best. It's the best. NASDAQ's the best out of all of the growth assets, and MicroStrategy is going to make its way all the way to the top of the NASDAQ. At least that's my view, and that's why it's my biggest position, and that's why I'm so pleased today to see $1.34 billion buy up until next week. So we'll see what he does next week. Anyways, this was not investment advice, not financial advice, just entertainment. Hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.